Yep. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our June podcast. These podcasts are put on for Laughter Yoga Australia for people to know more about who we are and what we do, and some really, really interesting people and the amazing work that they are doing within the organisation throughout Australia. I'm delighted that we have Heather Joy Campbell with us here today. And to give you a little bit of background, not on Heather, because Heather Joy, I'm going to make that mistake several times. Heather Joy, I must say that she can explain that it's her real name. A little bit of background be going right back to, I think, 2005. Laughter yoga in Australia exploded because Dr. Kataria came out and did what he does so well in promoting laughter clubs, social laughter clubs, and getting people trained to be able to run laughter clubs. And what happened in that time, there was a significant person in each state that actually took control of that state and run it on behalf of Dr. Kataria. And the states that are still going really, really well are the ones where that individual held onto it and then passed the baton on to somebody else. Unfortunately, what happened in New South Wales and Queensland, those people left and there was no one to hand the baton on to. So, as a consequence of that, the interest in laughter clubs subsided quite significantly. Until along comes someone in Queensland called Heather Joy Campbell, and Heather has been instrumental in taking over the responsibility for Queensland. So we're indebted to her on that. And she will tell you more about the amazing work that she's done in establishing laughter clubs throughout Queensland. So that's the backstory. Heather Joy Campbell, thank you so much for coming along and being involved in this podcast. I have my first question, and this is how we start every one of these. Who were you before Laughter Yoga? Take us back in time to Heather Joy pre-Laughter Yoga.
Well, Heather Joy pre-loved yoga. Um, Heather Joy is my birth name. Campbell is my surname. Joy is not my surname. But I didn't use the joy in my name in my previous professional life. And I didn't feel a lot of joy in my previous professional life at times. I loved what I did, but the stress was pretty evident.
Tell us about that profession, if you don't mind, roughly what you were doing and who you were doing it for and the likes. And more importantly, because people are in this situation now, especially post-COVID, of extreme levels of stress. So just paint a little picture about what that environment and what that work entailed for us.
Sure, I was a professional journalist, media advisor to a politician, to a leader of government. I was a magazine editor. I, I was living with headlines and deadlines. I was not known as Heather Joy, and I certainly didn't behave like it either. My special area of writing was in medical and health.
Oh,
And that's kind of how I came to Laughter Yoga because I'd been editing a book. I've written several books. I've ghosted many more. I've edited lots. And I was editing a book, and there was a chapter in it by Philippa Chalice, who is Geelong's laughter queen. And she was talking about laughter yoga. And my little antenna went up and thought, oh, this sounds like a good story. So once the book had gone off to publication, I made a phone call to her, having pitched it to one of the magazines I was then writing for. And we had a little chat, and I am so grateful Zoom wasn't there, because I was sitting madly writing notes, and I remember eyeball rolling when she said, you must experience this. Because as a journalist, I'd go from one story to the next story to the next story, and we didn't have that indulgence of experiencing. We simply wrote, and that'd been my life for 30 years. I wrote my story, and a few days later, I found myself on the computer Googling to see where there was a laughter club or whether there was a laughter club. And there was one in Brisbane, the New Farm Laughter Club. And I drove there 2 days later, and I saw 5 people standing out underneath a tree. And I thought, oh, good, no. Oh, no, no way, absolutely not. 5 people under a tree and lots of people walking past, because New Farm Park is incredibly popular and busy. And there was a market day, and there were people going to boot camp and Zumba class, and these 5. And I knew that this was the right place because there was a big yellow sign, fabric sign, that was wrapped around this old Moreton Bay fig. And it was like, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree.
Ah.
And as I stood there looking from a distance, this bloke called out, "Are you a laughter virgin?"
Oh, ouch.
And I almost turned on my heels and ran.
I would have been out of there.
Thankfully, another one of the 5 said, "Are you here for laughter yoga? We're about to get started."
Good approach. I like this.
And so I moved into that little circle. A few extras came along, and after a few minutes, I was not quite worrying about what other people might be thinking. And in 45 minutes, I was just so, and I wanted more, and I kept on going back for more. And I did my training as a laughter leader 6 months later. And then almost 2 years later, I did my teacher training in India.
How long after the leader training did you start your own laughter club?
I am very grateful that after my leader training, I was still at Brisbane Laughter Club, so still at New Farm. And they had a roster of every week a different leader would be on. And so I was buddied with that very person who called out, "Are you here for laughter?" Not the other one. I was buddied for a couple of months, and then I was on the roster. So it was a gentle way, and I'm ever so grateful for that. It was when I was in India and doing my teacher training, and Dr. Kataria said he was aware of Brisbane Laughter Club. I'd taken on the social media component of that, and it had a good following. And he was aware that I was there, and he said, "You cannot go back there. You must set up at least one more club."
Mm.
And I did. And it will be 9 years old in 3 weeks' time.
Bravo. Well done. So going back to so you're still working as a journalist, but you're all of a sudden leading this laughter club. So clearly you went straight back and renamed yourself Heather Joy and told everyone at work everything about laughter yoga.
No.
Or not.
Look, in some of the roles that I was still carrying, I needed to be pretty serious, and I needed to be taken seriously. And one of the lovely things that we found with laughter yoga is I don't have to take myself as seriously anymore. But I needed to be taken seriously, particularly by politicians. I had experienced in previous years the likes of Joe Bjelke saying, who was for those who don't know, he was the Premier of Queensland. And I was a political reporter at the time, and he called me a silly little girl because I'm not exactly tall in stature, and I'm female, and I was young. But to be called a silly little girl on national television didn't really go down terribly well. So I wanted to be taken seriously. So I didn't call myself Heather Joy. I mean, my family called me Heather Joy, but I still had my byline and I had my other life. And in end of 2018, I decided to go out on a limb and not renew a contract with a major media company and reclaim being myself, my true self, and do laughter yoga on its own, not as a side gig, and
Mhm.
not just for laughter clubs.
So, did anyone notice anything about you, a change in you? Surely you were changing with all of this laughing, and didn't anyone ever come up and go, "You've changed a little bit"? Did you ever have that moment?
Always.
There you
And
go.
still people who haven't seen me for a while still go, wow. Yeah. My husband said I was radiant. I was so glad I wasn't pregnant when he said that. My kids, within a couple of weeks, they were teenagers and they were saying that I was less cranky. I hadn't realized I was cranky, but mind you, I had raised my kids as a sole parent until they were into their teens. I'd only been remarried 2 years at that point. Just after I'd remarried, or had married, my mum came to live with us with terminal cancer. So as well as juggling headlines and deadlines, I was juggling my mum being in the house and she was dying, and I was her carer, and I had two teenagers. Plus, plus I'd inherited five fabulous stepchildren who were teenagers. Why else would I want to laugh?
Dear.
In all seriousness, lots of people saw a change in me. I saw the change in me. I had been on antidepressants. I'm no longer on
Oh,
antidepressants. I was on significant medication for high blood pressure, you know. So those changes, they didn't come overnight, but they came.
well,
And
I love these podcasts because I find out things about people that I've known for years, and I did not know that background with your medication, which was interesting. How hard was it to get off the medication?
it was just stepped down. I didn't just stop. I spoke with the
No, no,
doctor. We stepped it down.
it's a really important point that I make to people with laughter. Don't replace it with something else. Work with the health professional and see what we can do and work together collaboratively to actually help reduce medication, if nothing else. You sound as though, and you should be a great storyteller because you write stories all the time. What makes a good story?
Relatability, being real. Sometimes there's a bit of usually there's that something different, yeah, I mean, for news, it's who, what, when, where, why, how. And that's my, but what makes that story? It's usually going to be the relatability,
With
the hook. It's the
yeah,
hook. And you know, Murph, I don't feel that I've ever had that hook. So in coming on to this podcast, I I know I didn't want to talk about my story because heck, I just do what I do to promote laughter clubs in Queensland.
good on you. You still have a very relatable story told very well. So thank you for sharing it. And the important thing is we all have a story. And when you're talking about something as weird as laughter yoga, and especially if we're going to do it in a public place like out in the open,
Hmm.
people want to know, why should I do it? And it's often those personal stories. We can go through the benefits of lower blood pressure, this sort of stuff, but it's those relatable stories that actually make it real for you. What do you think it was about the laughter and doing it regularly that worked for you? So we've heard the outcome, which is brilliant, but what do you think it was about that laughter that worked for you?
There's that immediate release of the feel good chemicals, so the dose of the happies, um, and that's quite instantaneous. You know, it's a few minutes and you're feeling so good. And yeah, I can get that on a bike and I can get that in the gym, but not the same way. There was that sense of connection with others.
Yes.
That was really big, and it's still really important for me. Um, I often have felt that I was not part of a group. In this, I am very much part of the group. Um, and I've loved watching others connect and yeah, connect to lose their sense of isolation, to belong with others. that's been really important. Um, I think that feeling of not taking myself so seriously
Hmm.
was a really good learning. It also taught me, and I'm still working on this one, that I don't have to be perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. In my career, I had to be pretty bloody switched on and perfect. Sorry, that word slipped through. I need to bleep there. But I couldn't afford to make mistakes. So uh, realizing I don't have to be perfect is a terrific learning.
In you. And this podcast is not perfect because there's that dog again in the background.
Soundproofing, huh?
It is. It is what it is. It is what it is. It is sometimes about sitting back and watching your laughter club and go, I created that. Good on me. Tell me some stories that have impacted people within your laughter club. Over 9 years, that's an awful long time. You must have some great stories that stand out.
So I have three laughter clubs. Oh, well, I I have three. I yeah, I founded the Gap Laughter Club, which is now the strongest one in Brisbane. But I moved away from the Gap 4 years ago, and I'm incredibly proud and grateful. Proud of those people who stepped up, and became the leaders, and grateful to them for um, continuing to create that safe space. That club has anything between 12 and 20, sometimes more people
Wow.
weekly turn
Wow.
up on a Saturday morning. Um, and what I saw when I was there was there were all ages, and we've got parents with children, we've got older people in their 80s or whatever who've gone through, 9 years of coming to Laughter Club and making it every Saturday morning.
Wow.
Yeah, it's part of it's early in the morning, and then they go off and have coffee. So it's become part of a ritual. And when we had some members who, had cancer diagnosis and were going through chemo, so seeing others come and say, "Oh, I'm going to drop off a meal for you."
Mm.
Somebody was going away on holidays. I'll walk your dog. You don't need to get a dog sitter or whatever. That sort of connection, I think, has been really delightful and surprising. At my clubs here on the Redcliffe Peninsula, it's the one at North Lakes, which is on a Thursday evening, that I see the really profound differences. There's a couple, but one particular woman who's been coming for the last 3 years, and she works in the CBD, so she's got a 45-minute train ride. She makes sure she's on that train, and she's there 5 minutes before start. She comes screaming through. She goes, "Oh, I had such a day, such a day, such a day, such a day, such a day," and her shoulders are up, touching her ears like mine used to be. And then she comes at the end of the class and I feel so good, So that sort of change is just spectacular.
Well done on establishing those clubs. They're very important. Of course, we get invited along to commercial organisations, hospitals, schools, etc. I'm sure you've been invited to many of them. Tell us about that experience as a true professional laughter person going into organisations.
In the main, they are seen as just a bit of fun,
Ah,
is my experience.
yes.
There'll be one-offs, or maybe one or two in a year at the same company.
Yep.
And I really focus on the team building. So bringing those masks down, connecting with one another, and relaxing into it.
Have you had a story of something that happens that stands out to you at one of those presentations? Because they're quite different to a laughter club where everybody's coming and they want to be there, and sometimes the people don't want to be there. Have you got an amusing story about something that happened at one of those gigs?
Not that I'm going to share because that wouldn't be very professional.
I find that they can be a tougher group. They can be a
They
tougher
can,
group, especially
absolutely.
when they're told you must be here and you must laugh. And I go, oh, really? And
Mm.
once again, as you did before, we are defined often by the work that we do. And if it's a very serious organisation, their whole concept of laughing is just not there at all. Certainly, we provide stress relief for these people. So it's very
Mm.
much about the team connection and the stress relief. Um, why don't they get us coming back? What do we need to do? I'm not going to blame the client. What do we need to do, Heather Joy, to get change that perception of, yeah, that was a bit of fun, but we'll never do again? What are we missing?
I think it's going to take a while. I think actually it's more than just what we are doing. It's also an Australian culture thing. And I think there's a lot of talk about well-being and valuing our employees. I think a lot of it's lip service. And that may not be a very professional thing to say either. But I think that funding of wellbeing programs, because let's be clear, you and I don't do those ones for free. They're commercial. Um, they don't have that sort of funding. Um, but Australians also, our laughter clubs, uh, are not as robust as, in my dreams of 10 years ago. And I think that comes back down to our culture. We are not we are not India, where it originated. We are not Vietnam. We are not Japan. We are not Taiwan, where they are really big, and but there's a mass population there as well. So when we compare ourselves to those countries, we're not looking at apples with apples because we don't have that mass. We don't have um, the practice of everybody in our neighbourhood goes here to this park, although I work at a dog park, at this park, and we all do some exercise together every day, which is culturally the norm in some of the Asian countries. We don't have, that's not part of our norm. I was delighted when I read some research that came out of the UK a few years ago, Anna Hatchford's, about the impact that just once a month, 1 hour laughter club could actually make on the psyche, on the emotional well-being, and the social well-being, and the awareness of actually, I felt so good doing that. I'm going to continue to do X, Y, and Z and help my well-being until I laugh again. And I thought that was something that Australia really could take on board, because maybe we're just not the weekly people. Maybe we want something that's special, that once a month special thing that we can look forward to. Hmm. And
No.
maybe that's what a workplace needs as well, something they can look forward to, whether that's once a month or once a quarter.
It is interesting. I've been in business 50 something years, and I've heard of all this going back 50 years ago. Our people are our greatest asset,
Mm.
etc. And in came OH&S, then in came workplace wellbeing. We've got psychosocial safety at the moment. We tend to talk about these things, but then we look for the silver bullet that's going to solve all of those problems for free. And the realization for these organizations is it's a little bit harder than that. We really need to keep at it and really doing things that the organization can continue to do, and they continue laughing and continue taking themselves a little less seriously and developing a sense of humor. So for you, you've helped them do this by writing blogs under the Happy Demic. Tell me about those.
So the Happy Demic's my business. It was originally it was a blog to help educate people about laughter yoga, because I felt that there was a great misunderstanding. That was back in the day before I became a laughter leader, when I just experienced it. And I
Wow.
thought there was a huge misunderstanding. There wasn't a lot of information. I went searching for it, it wasn't there. So I thought, use my skills and start to write about it. And hopefully they'll be shared. Whether they have or haven't been is another matter. Um, but what I've tried to do is to go to the research, because I'm still very research oriented, to the latest published work, evidence based research, and then go and talk to the person who did that research.
You see, you're about facts and data and getting things right. So I like that. With your profession, it was all about making sure that everything was correct as best as they possibly can. And
I believe there's a lot of rubbish out there in the wide world of web and social media, and a lot of influencers. I'm not an influencer. I don't intend to be an influencer. Some would say I am. I don't intend that. I'm not going to be giving people ideas about fads, or they need to have a fact. And the fact is, there is good medicine in laughter.
And we will be referencing your Happydemic blogs and sending people off to get that very well written, well constructed evidence. And you'll be delighted to know, and I haven't told you this yet, that I was written up in a magazine just recently. And at the end of the article, it had a couple of little sayings about laughter, etc. And then it said, reference Happydemic. I'm going, there you go. People are sharing your information even without you knowing it. So I will send you the link to that article and you'll go right to the end. And I couldn't believe my eyes because it was talking all about things and then it had these little sayings and then it said reference Happydemic. So people are noticing what you're doing. We
Yeah.
are we are all influencers, not in the general term about, doing some interesting stuff, but just letting people know the real story about laughter yoga, the real story about laughter yoga Australia, the real story about laughter clubs, and what it is we're trying to achieve throughout Australia as an organisation to help people with their mental health, with their stress levels, with their connection to other people, to themselves. We tick all of these boxes. It's really quite a magical thing that needs to be experienced. So, Heather Joy, just one last question. One thing that you haven't done that you'd like to do, what would it be?
Well, my goal is to have a laughter club in every postcode of Queensland. I am not there yet.
And the thing is, we're such a big country. People don't realize this, that we are such a big country. We're such a big area, which is a great thing because if someone was to start a laughter club in their area, it would be an instant hit because you have that attraction of the local community. So well done you. I am aware of the way that laughter clubs are growing, especially post-COVID, slowly but surely, and I know the work that you do to put into making those successful. So our thanks as an organisation to you. Thanks for coming on board. Our half an hour's up. I told you we would get to the half an hour and we'd still have so much more to talk about. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. Once again, we'll put all the links to Heather's Laughter Club. Sorry, the Queensland Laughter Club. She's very passionate about this Queensland Laughter Club, and they are growing in different areas, which is great too. To Heather's organisation, the Happy Demic, to read those blogs. And if anybody would like to know more about anything that Heather's doing, contact her. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you, Heather Joy, and we're going to sign off. How should we sign off? Oh,
Thank you, Merv. Never.
sign off with a laugh. Why wouldn't we? Thank you, Heather Joy.
Ho,
Yeah, bye
ho, and ha, ha, ha.
bye.